Hello there, YouTube. Welcome to Monday's edition of The Breakfast Club. I'm Got That Funk. Thanks for joining me. I'd also like to thank my friend GingerGreek for taking over the Friday slot here on The Breakfast Club. His animated, spicy style is something I think is most welcome here on The Breakfast Club, and I'm looking forward to many conversations with him in the future. One thing he said in his video, Let's Talk Charlottesville, which came out on Friday, that I did disagree with and wanted to sort of make sure that it didn't go unanswered, was when he said that he thinks it's okay to punch a Nazi for being a Nazi. Now, Gigi already knows where I'm coming from about this because I made a video months ago about this exact subject on my own channel, as did he. So we already both knew where each other were coming from on this, but this is more for the benefit of the viewing audience. And I know most of you already know where I'm coming from this as well, but I think it bears repeating considering his comment. It's my position that it's never okay to initiate physical violence against another person. The only time it's okay to be violent against another person is if that person is being violent against you first. In other words, it's okay to use force in self-defense. I would add that it's okay to use force in defending someone who is themselves defenseless. So, for example, a child or maybe someone who's elderly, that kind of thing. It's okay to defend them with force because they can't do it themselves. But without those exceptions, I never think it's okay to initiate violence against someone. No matter how hateful and bigoted their point of view might be, their point of view alone can't cause physical harm. It can cause emotional harm, I'll grant you that, but it can't cause physical harm. And that's where we need to draw the boundaries. Here's why. Here's one of the reasons why. For any of us to have any freedom whatsoever, we have to be and we have to feel secure in our person. If you don't feel secure in your person, you don't have any freedom. You don't have the freedom to say and think what you want if you have to worry that saying what you want to say is going to get your ass kicked. You're not free to say it then. Or you won't feel free. And feeling free is a huge part of actually being free. If you're not free to talk to whoever you want to, you don't have the freedom of association, because if you think talking to this person or that person is going to get you approbation or get your ass kicked, you're not really going to feel free to talk to them. Freedom of association, freedom of assembly. If you think that going to a synagogue or a mosque or a church or a demonstration is going to get your ass kicked, you're not free to assemble peacefully. We need to have these freedoms, and the only way to preserve those freedoms is to maintain security of the person as a basic first step which underpins all freedoms. So there's that. Another reason why I don't think it's okay to punch a bigot for being a bigot is because when you punch someone, when you initiate violence against someone, you turn that person automatically into a victim. You hand them a victim card, which they can then wave around and use to garner sympathy from people. Some of those people probably would have thought that that person was a jerk just like you did because they're a bigot and have these horrible points of view. But as soon as you hand them a victim card, something in human nature says, hey, that shouldn't have happened to you. And then they feel sorry for you, even though they still might think you're a jerk. On some level, they feel sorry for you. And we should never give Nazis or any other kind of bigots an excuse for people to feel sorry for them. That's actually a gift to them in a way. So even if you hurt them in the moment, you've actually benefited them in the long run. And I just don't think that's a fair trade. I don't think it's wise or correct. So there's that. Another thing I think is really important is because this principle should be sacrosanct, that violence should only ever be acceptable. Physical force should only ever be used in self-defense, because it works both ways. When Donald Trump famously said last week in a press conference that there was violence on both sides in Charlottesville, he took a lot of shit for that, and rightly so, because as regards Charlottesville anyway, I saw plenty of footage of the protesters who were there to maintain the statue of Robert E. Lee. I saw plenty of video evidence of them initiating violence against counter-protesters. And I've also seen the footage of the car ramming into the crowd, which ended up killing someone. Those people that he rammed into weren't being violent. They weren't doing anything to the protesters to make them feel that they're in danger of their personal safety. And he rammed a car into a crowd of strangers, people he'd never met, but he just disagreed with. That's an extreme version of it's okay to hit someone you disagree with. You can't say it's okay for this person to do it, but it's not okay for that person to do it because that person is on the wrong side of the argument. Yes, they're on the wrong side of the argument, but the logic is virtually the same. You can't say that. Therefore, we have to draw the line at security of the person. We have to say that inviolable. And once you violate that, you have given up the moral high ground. You've turned yourself from being on the right side to on the wrong side. This is why I have such a problem with the Antifa movement that's been growing in America over the past year or so. See, Antifa is short for anti-fascist, and of course I am against fascism no matter what, okay? That should go without saying. But anybody who shows up at a demonstration looking for a ruck doesn't represent me. If you show up to a demonstration looking for a fight, looking to cause damage to property, fuck you. You don't represent me, and you're not doing the demonstration any favors whatsoever. Okay? Now, this goes both ways again, because a lot of people quite rightly made the point after Charlottesville that, Donald Trump said that there were a lot of, really decent people amongst the demonstrators who were there to maintain the Robert E. Lee statue. And a lot of people rightly said in response to that comment that decent people wouldn't hang around with someone who's waving a Nazi flag or giving the Nazi salute or chanting, "Fuck you, faggots," and all that kind of thing, which those demonstrators were doing. Okay? A lot of people say that if that happens, the people who don't agree with that shouldn't hang around, that they should disappear and go home. And while I think it might be prudent to leave a demonstration if the demonstration goes completely the wrong way on your side of the argument, I don't think going home is necessarily the right answer. You should sit down and not participate in the bigotry or whatever else. And that goes for, unfortunately, people on the other side of the argument. If you're there, say for example, if you're demonstrating in favor of free college, or you're demonstrating in favor of demonstrating against Donald Trump or whatever, and some people show up with like balaclavas on and their face masks or whatever, and are waving the Antifa flags and all that kind of thing, and they are getting violent, destroying property, that kind of thing, don't leave, don't participate, sit down. Voice your disgust. Show your disgust, as long as you don't feel you're putting yourself in physical peril. But what you shouldn't do is leave, and here's why I don't think you should leave. The whole point of a demonstration is to be counted, and by surrendering and saying, look, these people don't represent me, so I'm going to leave, the only people there representing the side you're on are the people who are doing the wrong thing. So you have to maintain the right side of the argument by staying there. Just don't participate in the unwholesome or violent behavior. Okay? To me, that's really important. And it shouldn't really need to be said, because I don't really think that individuals are responsible for the actions of groups and vice versa. However, quite frankly, if you show up to a demonstration and you think it's necessary to cover your face because you don't want to be identified, you've got no business at a demonstration. The whole point of demonstrating is to be counted, and you can't be counted if you're anonymous. All right? From my point of view, I can't see any reason why you would want to conceal your identity at a demonstration unless you are there to cause trouble. And if you're there to cause trouble, if you're there for physical violence or property damage, you can go fuck yourself. Okay? You're not doing the cause any help whatsoever. Now, I know there's plenty of people who disagree with this. I saw a tweet from Chelsea Manning yesterday. Someone I follow retweeted it, which basically said that direct action has more tangible results than passive demonstrating will ever do. Now, I disagree with that in principle. If what is implied by that tweet was that direct action needs to be destructive or violent, however, I would vehemently point out that direct action is a good idea if it's not destructive or violent. For example, back decades and decades ago, when Gandhi was doing his thing trying to help liberate India, there was a famous demonstration where Gandhi went to the sea and made salt, and so did thousands of other Indians. Made salt at the sea and started selling salt without a permit, which was in violation of the law that was imposed by the British authorities, who were in control of India at that time. And the British authorities decided they had to arrest everyone for breaking the law, but of course so many people were doing it that they literally filled the jails up, and they've actually made it impossible for the authorities to enforce their own law. That is an effective direct action. It was not violent, it was not destructive, but it had a tangible effect. There are instances, let's admit it, where riots have broken out that have also had tangible positive effects. I'm thinking, for example, about the Stonewall riots back in the late 70s or early 80s when that happened. I can't remember off the top of my head. But that did directly lead to some positive results for people who were LGBT at the time, who were being badly discriminated against. Another one here in the UK, there were several poll tax demonstrations, anti-poll tax demonstrations, I should say, at the end of the 80s and early 90s. But it wasn't until there was a riot in London when the government finally decided that, hey, maybe this poll tax isn't such a good idea, and so they decided to, you know, revise the policy. All they really did was change the name of it, though, and still got away with it. So I don't really necessarily think it solved that much, the fact that there was a riot, but it did make the government realize that they had to reconsider their position. So yeah, okay, granted, sometimes riots, property damage, that kind of thing can bear results that are in the interest of the people demonstrating, but you can't count on that. More to the point, if you relinquish the high ground by becoming destructive or violent, you give the authorities a reason, legitimate reason, to crack down on demonstrating in the first place. And that's something that we should never relinquish, okay? The right to demonstrate is more important than the right to vote, in my opinion. You can demonstrate as often as you want about a particular issue. You can't really do that when it comes to voting. Voting, you're voting for a specific group of ideas that you broadly agree with. Demonstrating, you can do that as often as you want about specific issues, and you can make the authorities stand up and take notice. But you have to do it right. Everyone at a demonstration has responsibilities. The police have responsibilities to keep the peace. The demonstrators and counter-demonstrators have responsibilities to keep the peace. Okay? JFK in his civil rights address acknowledged that people marching for civil rights had legitimate grievances, and he acknowledged that the right to demonstrate was a legitimate one. He also pointed out several times in that speech that people who are not demonstrating don't feel safe when demonstrations are going on, precisely because of the potential for things to go wrong, for violence to erupt. Okay? Therefore, we need to create a society where people don't have legitimate reasons to demonstrate. Therefore, there won't be riots and there won't be people feeling nervous because the demonstrations are going on. I actually agree with that. I think we should try to create a world where there's not enough to gripe about, where you really feel the need to hit the streets and tell the government that they're not on your side. The government should be on your side. And like my friend Vogter used to say on his channel frequently back in the day, and I'm sure he stole a quote from someone, but you know, people shouldn't fear the government. The government should fear the people in a democracy. Demonstrations are the best example of why. I'm absolutely for the right to demonstrate, but I'm completely against demonstrations becoming physically violent against people or property. There has to be a better way. There is a better way. We need to be able to gather together and organize and bring those better ways about. Whether that's a general strike or some other kind of direct action, which might be more persuasive than passive demonstrating, fine. But non-violent, that's the key. As soon as things get violent, the authorities are the ones with the moral high ground, and that's just not the way it should be. I want to thank you guys for putting up with this video. I know it's went way longer than I meant it to. Sister Danger, I have it on good authority, will be here for tomorrow's video. I look forward to a vigorous discussion with you all down in the comment section, and I'll see you again next week. Thanks for watching.